There are dozens of churches in the small town of Oskaloosa, Iowa, which is about 60 miles southeast of the state capital, Des Moines. To be precise, 34 churches for just over 11,000 residents.
Oh, my God, in you I put my trust. Yes, I do.
At one of those parishes, Jubilee Family Church, 100 or so parishioners gathered on a recent chilly Sunday morning to hear a sermon about politics.
What we believe in doing is truly understanding the issues, truly understanding them from a biblical worldview, and truly understanding what the ramifications of those issues really are.
Pastor Bill Tweed told his parishioners that come caucus night, they'll face a stark choice.
You'll either put men in office who are governed by God's voice, or they're governed by something that challenges what God says.
Tweed says he plans to vote for Minnesota Representative Michelle Bachmann, but he can't just come out and endorse her from the pulpit. That would violate federal law, and his church could lose its tax-exempt status. So he plies his congregation with information, stacks of pamphlets and handbills at the back of the church's sanctuary, and sermons that focus on which political principles conform to what the church believes God says.
See, I won't endorse a candidate. I won't do that. I want you to learn how to do it. I want you to learn how to understand who to vote for and who not to vote for. I can let my people know what the Bible says about the pertinent issues. What does the Scripture teach about abortion? What does it teach about the definition of marriage? What does the Bible teach about socialism?
Tweed says some election years only one Republican candidate in the pack measures up to his interpretation of what the Bible teaches. 4 years ago, he says it was former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. In January of 2008, he won the Iowa GOP caucuses by winning the votes of nearly half of the state's conservative evangelicals. This time, things are going to be different. When Iowa Republicans get together in buildings like the courthouse behind me for the more than 1,700 precinct meetings that make up the Iowa caucuses, there's no consensus candidate that has the support of conservative evangelicals.
With Gingrich and with Bachmann and Santorum and with Perry, Paul, and even when Kane was in the race, they're all going after a lot of that Huckabee support.
Bob Vanderplatz was chairman of Mike Huckabee's Iowa campaign in 2008. Then he led a campaign against 3 state Supreme Court justices who ruled in favor of gay marriage and ended up driving them out of office. Now he runs an advocacy group for social conservatives called The Family Leader, and Fox News calls him a kingmaker in Iowa.
The Los Angeles Times wrote that meeting with you is a prerequisite for any candidate who wants to compete in Iowa. Is that true?
I don't know if it's a prerequisite to meet with me, but I believe it's the issues that our organization represents. And our supporters are very, very sincere about these issues. They're very interested in who's going to champion these issues. Our supporters are going to show up on caucus night.
In November, the Family Leader hosted a forum for GOP hopefuls.
We don't need you to be Republican or Democrat, but we need you to be biblical.
And the candidates lined up to tout their fealty to socially conservative positions.
The left is prepared to impose intolerance and to drive out of existence traditional religion.
They slammed abortion rights.
I have supported the amendment that defines life at conception.
As long as abortion is legal, at least according to the Supreme Court, legal in this country, we will never have rest.
Gay marriage.
The family is defined as one man, one woman, no other definition will do.
And what they call Obamacare.
Obamacare has to go because it's trying to tell us how to deliver health care in our states.
The candidates came because conservative evangelical voters are organized and motivated. They turn up on caucus night. And endorsements from socially conservative groups like the Family Leader could turn one of them into the Mike Huckabee of the current campaign. But Vanderplatz says none of them ended up stealing the hearts of Iowa's conservative evangelicals.
We had 6 candidates at our Thanksgiving family forum, and I think it was my wife afterwards who said, you know, Bob, if we could take those 6 and put them in a blender and just have the strengths come out and have one candidate. And I said, Darla, you're getting awfully close to cloning. But we would have a perfect candidate. And I think what we're realizing today, there is no perfect candidate.
Vanderplat says there are ways to determine which candidates are less imperfect than the others.
What criteria do you use? I mean, what's your sort of measuring stick for candidates?
We don't want to elect a president that we don't trust. So we're trying to determine, first of all, can we trust you? And in politics, if we can't trust you on the sanctity of human life, or if we can't trust you on God's design for the family, one man, one woman marriage, or Constitution, the appointment of justices, how would we ever trust you with the economy or national security or things of that nature?
Vanderplat says that he and the family leader aren't even considering endorsing former Utah Governor John Huntsman because he hasn't campaigned in Iowa. Texas Congressman Ron Paul doesn't pass their ideological tests. When it comes to former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, some conservative evangelicals cite his inconsistency on issues.
Not that he's just been on both sides of key issues. He's been passionately on both sides of key issues.
Others say they're also troubled by Romney's Mormon faith. Remember those pamphlets at the back of Oskaloosa Pastor Bill Tweed's church? One of them argues that Mormons aren't Christians.
I look in the back of the room and I see that you have pamphlets about Mormonism. What are your concerns about Mormonism, and do they play into your issues with Mitt Romney?
Theologically, we do not agree with Mormonism. It has different doctrines than what we as an Orthodox Christian church would believe. And I believe that that can have a bearing.
That leaves 4 candidates who pass muster with most of Iowa's conservative evangelicals: Representative Bachmann, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, Texas Governor Rick Perry, and former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich.
They don't know who to support. They've got 4 people they're talking about.
Doug Gross is another prominent Iowa Republican. He says he's more motivated by fiscal matters and small government than by social issues. He's a longtime rival of Bob Vanderplat's, and Gross says the division among conservative evangelicals will end up weakening their impact in the caucuses.
If you've got 4 people that are acceptable and you're dividing your minority votes among 4 people, you're clearly not going to have the impact you did last time.
Please help me welcome the former U.S. Speaker, Newt Gingrich.
When Gingrich was atop the polls in Iowa, Bob Vanderplat said the state's conservative evangelicals were likely to end up uniting behind the former speaker.
There's probably nobody more prepared to handle the environment in which we exist today than Speaker Gingrich because of his historical knowledge and his ability to articulate and to be decisive.
Vanderplat says Gingrich won points by affirming a marriage pledge that the family leader presented to the GOP field. The former speaker wrote that he opposed gay marriage and would uphold the institution of marriage through personal fidelity to his spouse.
He's got a lot of baggage, and I'm not just talking about political baggage.
Yeah.
Couple of broken marriages, some serious infidelity in the past.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't trust him. Do you trust him now? Do you think he's a changed man?
The short answer to that is yes, I do. And part of that is that Speaker Gingrich and I have had this conversation several years ago, not several weeks ago. So it's not a road to Des Moines conversion, which we see way too often, Mitt Romney. And for those of us of the Christian faith, the heart of our faith is forgiveness.
But even though the former speaker was at the time leading in the polls, and Vanderplat seemed to be ready to endorse him, some of Iowa's conservative evangelicals weren't willing to make that leap of faith.
God believes that when it comes to leadership, character is king.
Oskaloosa Pastor Bill Tweed says Gingrich isn't the most reliable social conservative in the race. Tweed takes exception to the former speaker's support for abortion rights for rape victims and his endorsement of some gun control legislation.
I'm more of an ideologue. I see it through the eyes of principle.
The lack of consensus among Iowa's conservative evangelicals has opened up opportunities for the candidates they don't support, Ron Paul and Mitt Romney in particular. Republican Doug Gross says he hopes that come caucus night, the state's conservative evangelicals will end up looking for the same thing as the rest of the GOP.
Who can beat Barack Obama? they're going to tell you there's all these ideological things, and there's subsets of every group that have these ideological questions, and they want a totally principled candidate that's consistent with that ideology. But at the end of the day, the person who's going to win the caucuses in Iowa is the person the Republicans think have the best chance of beating Barack Obama.
But that advice didn't make it any easier for Iowa conservative kingmaker Bob Vander Plaats to crown any of the candidates with an endorsement. When he seemed to be leaning towards backing Gingrich a month before caucus day, an organizer for the family leader reminded Vander Plaats that conservative evangelicals remain divided.
A lot of our people are Bachman or Santorum.
Yeah, we hear a lot of that. But there's also, I mean, if you looked at the latest poll, Gingrich has got way more evangelical vote and support than they do.
As Gingrich's momentum slowed, the board of Vander Plaats' group couldn't reach agreement. And just 2 weeks before caucus night, the organization announced that it wouldn't endorse any of the candidates. Vander Plaats decided to give his personal endorsement to Rick Santorum, who's been running well behind the frontrunners in Iowa. Last week, Vander Plaats vigorously denied published reports that he sought up to $1 million to endorse one of the candidates. Santorum said he recalled a conversation with Vander Plaats about money, but insisted it wasn't about paying for an endorsement, only about raising money to publicize it. Now, with the caucuses only days away, polls suggest conservative evangelicals in Iowa still haven't coalesced around a single candidate. Doug Gross says in the long run, that's a good thing for the GOP.
The social conservatives are a power within the Republican Party. They're particularly a power in the caucuses, but they are not the majority power. They don't pick the winner. You can't be a governing party and have a minority control you. You become a minority party if that occurs. And the focus of our parties are to win elections to carry out results, not to carry out results by losing elections.